This is Zestology. Happy New Year. Coming to you from London. It's the podcast all about energy, vitality and motivation. And of course, it is a new year. Hope you had a good one. Good festive season. Plenty of partying. And this podcast is about energy after all. And January the 1st is perhaps a time when you feel a little bit sluggish after a lot of mince pies and good cheer. And therefore, there's a full zesty programme over the next few days and weeks to kind of help you get you back on track. And because it's a new year, me and Dr. Steve have got together to record a special podcast looking ahead to 2019, featuring on today's podcast some of the things that energise us the most. This podcast is about energy, so it seemed like a good idea to do that. And you will hear about an app that will energise you, a practice that will energise you, a theory that will energise you, a diet that will energise you, a gadget that will energise you, and lots more. So happy New Year and happy listening. Also a bit of a milestone for this podcast. This is episode 200. Zestology has been going almost 4 years now, and as well as being passionate about bringing you the kind of new rules of health, I also just love doing it. It's very much a hobby as well, so it's a small milestone of sorts, isn't it, getting to 200 podcasts, and of course it is, from my perspective, a real privilege to meet the guests that I do on Zestology as well. So here's to the next 200. Hope you've enjoyed listening to some of them over the last 3 or 4 years or so, and I hope you enjoy listening to this one as well. It's a Happy New Year 2019 Energy Hacks podcast with Dr. Stephen Simpson. Here he is. So, how you doing?
Pretty well, thanks, Tony. What
Good.
about you?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, it's you're fresh from this TV show that you've done today.
I am. And this is a first for us because you've just been talking about your day. We were both on air on different stations at the same time.
Yeah, I know, we were up against each other.
Yeah.
I've got a nasty feeling you had more viewers than I did.
I would never have brought that up.
Yeah. But no, congratulations anyway. So you were talking about your book on BBC One.
I was, yeah.
BBC One? Yeah.
BBC One,
yeah.
Yeah, the Sunday Morning Live is the name of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the guests on the sofa were Richard Madeley and June Sarpong, who were both very good.
Yeah.
And then you were the expert opinion, weren't you? It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They introduced me as an academic, and I thought there must be somebody else on the show.
Well, I have to say, when I was watching, I was like, "Who's that again?" Oh, it's Dr. Steve. That's great, though. You are an academic.
Thank you.
So I thought it'd be interesting to discuss in this podcast, since it's going out at the start of the year, some of the practices that you and I have been kind of getting really into recently that could help people with more energy and vitality and motivation for 2018. Mm-hmm. And I know you and I have come up with a couple each. Mm-hmm. And just before we do that, tell me why I am sat in between two large black boxes at the moment, because we went for a coffee a couple of weeks ago and you said, "You've got to come over and try this thing. I've got this new thing that makes you feel great." And I know you've had incredible results with it, and you've been sitting your clients in these fields as well, in between these two boxes. And we're not going to spend too long on it, but I just want to know very briefly what I'm getting and what I'm going to feel afterwards.
Well, I'm not certain what you're going to get, Tony. Who knows? It's the world of possibilities. These are called bioresonance machines, and I've been interested in this subject for years and years. But in the past, the technology has never really convinced me, and the machines have been very clunky to use and incredibly expensive. But this latest one I've got is affordable, and it works on a variant of scalar technology, and that's the thing that obsessed Tesla during his life. It's a branch of quantum theory. It's incredibly complex, so please don't try and ask me to explain it to you. But those who are interested, Google it, and it'll blow your mind probably. But in simple terms, there is a wave transmitting from the backwards and forwards between these two machines, and going through you, because these waves can pass through metal, can pass through anything, and And the idea is that this energy will go through your body, and even if it just goes through the tip of your finger, it'll still spread through the rest of your body, and it will energize the mitochondria. Those are the little power packs we have in all of our cells of our body. And when we get older, when we've been working too hard, when we're not getting enough sleep, when we're not having a good diet, or there's pollutants coming in through our diet or our water or the environment, all of these things that can drain our energy, the theory is that this will recharge your mitochondria. And I've been experimenting is probably not the right word, but I've treating a few clients over the last month, and definitely myself as well. I don't do anything that I wouldn't ask my clients to do. And everybody so far has really enjoyed the experience. They've definitely felt subjective improvement in their mood and their confidence and their sleep patterns. And it's a little too early for me to say whether they've had any relief from the main condition that they came to see me with. But with my sort of interest in Chinese medicine, that half of my brain would say that doesn't really matter at the moment, because the Chinese say don't hunt for the diagnosis, because any disease is caused by a blockage of energy, and if you can get the energy flowing, then it will allow the rest of the body to be naturally healing itself.
Yeah, and that is on my list of talking points for today, getting the energy flowing as well.
Okay.
I mean, look, I want to provide the voice of skeptical reason and say certainly
Not like you, Tony.
It's fair to say that this is actually something that's very popular but also quite controversial, isn't it? And so I feel excellent at the moment, although I'm not sure whether it's the two black boxes either side of me or the company, just suffice to say, people can Google it, Scalar Technology, and find out for themselves and make their own minds up.
Yeah.
And come and see you if they want to come and sit in it and try it out, I suppose.
Yeah. And maybe in a few weeks' time, Tony, you can add a little bit to the. You can say if you have noticed any other things from our session together.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So the start of a new year.
Yeah.
We've both got a couple of things that we want to talk about. Shall I go first?
I think you better have.
Yeah. Meditation has been a big theme on this podcast, hasn't it? And you and I have covered meditation in some way every time we've recorded a podcast, I think.
Yes.
And, going back to when we were in Portugal and the ones we recorded before that, meditation in some way has been a theme of my life for about 10 years. And I used to call it self-hypnosis, and it's probably kind of more conventional meditation now. I went to 40 years of Zen, which was that week's retreat in the mountains outside Seattle, which was 2 years ago in January. And I think the thing about meditation is it is quite hard, full stop. And it's hard to do on your own. And when life is busy, it's really very difficult to still the mind in a short space of time. And it's quite nice occasionally to either have a guide or a kind of refresher. When and in the absence of 2 years ago going to 40 years of Zen, and last year going to that monastery that I went to in Thailand, didn't exactly go to plan, but there is a podcast if you want to hear about that experience.
Yeah, it was a great experience, and I recommend people do listen to it.
Oh yeah, it was good.
You'll see Tony in a new light.
Yes, yeah. Well, there's also an accompanying picture on the blog of me wearing all white and looking like a very junior doctor.
I thought you looked like an angel.
But something I've been using, and it's quite a simple recommendation, this one, is to bring a bit more focus to my meditation, and also to learn different ways, because I like learning about different styles of meditation as well. I've downloaded Sam Harris's app called the Waking Up Meditation app. And it's, I think the first 5 meditations on there are free, and then it's $7.49 a month. So it's it's price of 2 or 3 cups of coffee a month, and there's 50 days worth, this program, and I'm on about day 18 or 19 at the moment, and I'm really starting to enjoy it. And every meditation so far is between kind of 9.5 and 13 minutes, and it's just brought a little bit of focus and a little bit of relief to my mind wandering so badly when I meditate. For example, today, I was quite early start at Sky today, so I didn't have time to meditate in the morning, got up, went straight to Sky, and then before I went to get changed, I spent 10 minutes in the change room. I was like, right, guys, I'm just over to sort myself out. Just went and meditated. Little did they know I was meditating in the changing rooms. And it was such a good meditation today that I came out and I was in a completely different place. And I felt on fire for the whole show.
Brilliant.
I felt great, relaxed, chilled, funny. Probably wasn't being funny, but I thought I was. And I felt like that meditation really helped. So Sam Harris isn't to everyone's. Do you know Sam Harris?
No, I don't.
No. He's a modern, you'd probably call him a philosopher. He's quite famous in the States. He's an author. He talks a lot about meditation, about politics, engages on a number of subjects. Religion he talks a lot about as well. And it's very matter of fact, very low key, and there's no music, and I think it's a labour of love. He's put a lot of time into it. So that's my first recommendation, the Waking Up app.
That sounds a good one.
Yeah, I'm really interested to know what anyone else thinks of it as well, because this one, I think it was day 18 that I did today. Oh, I felt great afterwards. So, yeah, it was good. What have you got? You want to talk... Oh, I tell you what you want to talk about. You want to talk about how psychic early man was less gullible than modern humans, and how we now need a psychoic approach rather than a psychic approach.
Yeah, we need to go back to basics, as some people might say, back to back to how we were until about 50,000 years ago, because that's when we learned how to talk, and that's when things went badly downhill. No podcasts in the old days, of course.
Yeah, that's the only.
Yeah, that's the downside for us. But you see, the problem with talking is that it's a very imprecise, ambiguous form of communication, and particularly when we start writing words down, which is why people get hung out to dry because of one sentence in an email they might have posted. But before we could talk, we were obviously able to communicate with people. And we did it because we were experts at reading body language and non-verbal cues, and we had to be. And sadly, we've lost those skills that you could say are psychic. We knew stuff.
Is that because of technology?
It's because of learning to talk, and then particularly recently, the technology that has gone with it. And we've talked on this show many times, and your other guests have, about social media, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So yeah, I would say we've got more problems now than ever before with regard to being misunderstood, with regard to being confused, with regard to living in a slightly deluded view of the world.
And this is why you were on BBC One this morning, isn't it? Because you were talking about how humans struggle to differentiate between truth and blatant lies, and that is because evolution has robbed us of our intuition.
Yeah. What the person said, and you might have to cut this out, is that we've lost our bullshit radar.
No, I can keep that in. It's all right. Just put an explicit label on it. It's fine.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't usually normally use language like that, but it does seem a good way to describe.
I've known you to use it every once in a while, Steve. It's all right on this podcast.
Okay. But you see, before we could talk, we had to recognise pretty quickly who was out to kill us and who it would be our advantage to kill first. And we could certainly spot a phony or a fraud, a mile away. And I don't think it's as easy now, because people have become so convincing. The people who are really good at this, the manipulators, they plant those stories in the news. And there is research to show now that people are more likely to believe a fake news story than a true news story.
Yeah.
So talk about deluded. And that goes back to my book, because I say, look, in the past we were psychic. Now we've become slightly psychotic because we're deluded. Now, if we can find the middle ground where we can get the good of both of that and bring them together, that's the sweet spot, and that's what I call the psychoic state of mind, and why my book is called The Psychoic Revolution, because it's time we did something about this, because we're missing out on so much.
See, I love that, because I've always quite liked making up words, and you made up that word, didn't you?
I did. I mean, I did check in all the dictionaries, and I haven't found it anywhere. But I
That's amazing. That's brilliant. Well, it's a great word.
It is a great word,
yeah.
and I was so excited when I kind of had a mind pop about it. But sooner or later somebody's going to find it in a dictionary and say, Steve, you didn't make it up. And I don't care. It's still a good word.
Yeah, it's good. So what you're saying is, we used to be kind of a little bit psychic before we could speak. We had to just trust our instincts. We can't wind back the clock now. We've got all this fake news around us. We've got all our devices. We're obviously very advanced in terms of civilization and the way that we communicate with each other. But we need to combine our modern communication skills with the more traditional animalistic elements of our nature.
Yeah, correct. Putting it another way, we need to learn to connect more to the unconscious parts of our brain, because that's where instincts come from, and we're really good as a species in having instincts. Well, in fact, all animals have instincts, but ours are particularly well developed. The trouble is they're hiding at the moment. So if we can connect to that unconscious mind, without having to do anything extra, these gut feelings, these hunches are going to surface, and they will guide us through life a little bit like a GPS system. So the next question is, well, how do we do that? And actually, without you knowing it, you've already brought in one of the best ways to do it. You meditate, because you get a quiet mind, and as somebody said, it's only in a quiet mind that the truth can speak. That's another way of putting it. And so you know stuff without knowing why you know it or where it came from, but those are often the very best thoughts you're going to have. Which is why, surprise, surprise, when people go away on holiday, they come back after 2 weeks or whatever, or 6 weeks in your case.
I do like a holiday.
Of course you do, and you deserve it.
Yeah.
I think it's only 4 weeks, isn't it, actually? But you do go to some nice places.
The last 2 years it was 4 weeks, but not this January.
Yeah, and so, and I bet you, just like everybody else, you come back with a fresh view of life, energised and buzzing with new ideas to try out. Yeah. Well, you can't do that when you're struggling in, day jail like most people are, and especially as soon as you get home, you're smacked straight into the social media for a few hours and numb your brain a bit more. Now, some social media, of course, is good. I'm not trashing social media. I just think we need to put everything into perspective.
Yeah. One of the nice updates on the iPhone recently is that you can now change your settings to block any apps after a certain amount of time per day very easily on the iPhone. You don't need anything else to download. Or you can set little reminders so that, for instance, I tend to be a bit of a news junkie and I look at the Guardian site a lot. If I've looked at the Guardian for more than 15 minutes in a day, a little thing will pop up and say, you've exceeded your time limit for the day, so you can't read it anymore.
Yeah.
So that's a nice way of kind of starting to realise how much you use it. And I must say, it is shocking how quickly that 15 minutes go. 15 minutes is, I think, enough time to consume news for the day.
Yeah.
Or at least for the morning, or at least on my phone. But it seems to go pretty quickly.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I mentioned that I was on this TV show this morning, and a driver, I thought I was going to have to go on the tube. They'd sent a driver for me.
Wow, you're big time.
Yeah.
I never get drivers.
And in this ride, this is what stand-up comics say, you'll never guess what happened to me, in the taxi coming to the place tonight.
Yeah.
Well, 2 things happened to me during this drive, and I was chuckling as they happened. The first thing, once I got into this car, I noticed the driver had got 2 sat-navs. They all had the same route, but they both had a different time of arrival. And apart from that, he also had his mobile phone stuck on the windscreen, on remote. And I started to feel sorry for this driver, because he kept looking at the time going by and the 2 different machines, and I could see he was getting anxious, because obviously he had to deliver me on time. And I thought, well, there you are. This is a guy who is relying too much on his gadgets and has lost that innate skill of sort of navigating and know where he is, and things will work out. And then the other thing which you reminded me of, I had a little ping on my phone, and it was a message from Facebook. And it was saying, during the last week, you have reduced your time on Facebook by 32%. And the first thing I thought was, oh, that's great. And then I had another thought that came from nowhere, and it was like, oh no, that isn't great. I've lost friends. I'm not popular. I've some of the people I think are my friends, they're not my friends. So there you are. Even I am getting bamboozled by all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is an excellent recommendation for 2019, I think. Tapping into our psychoic selves, and if you want to check out Dr. Steve's book, then it is The Psychoic Revolution. I've been reading another book. This is my second thing that has been good for me in 2018, but I think also this year coming is going to be potentially quite good because we want to move house in the next couple of months. And that is, I've been reading Marie Kondo's book, which loads of people have told me about, but it's The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying, which has sold so many millions of copies worldwide. This extraordinary Japanese woman who's devoted her life to the practice of tidying up. Mm-hmm. And you'd think that it was so niche that there's just not enough to write a book about. But her style is excellent. She is, just to pre-warn you, she is pretty bonkers in her she believes that all things have energy, and one of her things about tidying,
I don't think that's bonkers, Tony.
So do you think that every pair of pants you own has energy? Because she would.
That's perhaps a bit extreme.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Speak to Marie. I refer you to Marie. Marie would say, don't fold your pants in a drawer one on top of the other. Fold them facing upwards, side by side. It looks neater, and if you fold them all in a pile, think about how crumpled and crushed that poor pair of pants at the bottom is going to feel. So there are some quite wacky parts.
That's a bit wacky, even for me. You're making me feel normal.
Maybe I should have come in with the kind of more sane stuff before I went to the total wacky.
Okay.
Anyway, actually, weirdly, I've got friends who have done that part of this technique, and they've said, it's brilliant. It looks neater, and you just use your space much better by doing it like that.
Yeah.
What she suggests is that you go through each different area of your life, and you don't do it by room, you do it by category. So you might have like clothes and books and gifts and personal mementos or whatever it might be. And you take everything out at once that you own. So I did this. For instance, I got every single bit of clothing that I owned, and I put it all on my bed. And all the shoes and all the old t-shirts that I haven't worn in a couple of years. And then I pick up each item, according to Marie, and I followed her thing, and she says, you ask yourself this question, 4 words. Does this spark joy? So you pick it up, I'd pick up each t-shirt, and say, does this spark joy? And you would not believe how much rubbish has come out of my house.
Yeah.
It is actually shocking. I've got a 1-bed flat. Mm-hmm. It's not a big place, but at least kind of 12 huge builder's bin bags of rubbish already gone, and I haven't even finished. And just t-shirt. I don't even think I've got that many clothes, but so much stuff goes. And then, of course, what's interesting, and her deeper point is that talk about the energy of things. There's also energy of spaces. And that I do buy into, because now I suppose it might be linked to feng shui. I walk into my room and I take a t-shirt out of my wardrobe and there's space. And when I take my clothes off at night, I know I'm not going to have to just leave them on the floor because there's enough space to put them back into the wardrobe. Mm-hmm. And it does make me feel kind of happy, the fact that everything's nice and tidy. My bookshelves look great now because I've tidied it all up.
Well, that all sounds good to me. It seems to me like this is a book we could all benefit from. Be interesting to know what when people, in your book club read it and what they say.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to me. I mean, I've had a similar experience in not quite the same way. As you know, we used to live in quite a big house in the country, and we had to downsize, or right size, I should say, to a 2-bedroom apartment. Yeah. And so we had to get rid of a lot of stuff. And I was carting this stuff to the rubbish dump every day. And the funny thing was that as I drove out, I felt lighter.
Yeah.
And then I started looking at other people, and everybody was smiling. They were happy, and I wasn't imagining this. And years ago, I worked in the desert in the Middle East, and the nomads would come through the village from time to time, and I'd talk to them the best I could. And they said, we have a proverb: everything that you carry is a thing that is going to slow down your life. Mm-hmm. So they really travel light.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, but I mean, having said that, you can still see what they can do. I mean, their tents are magnificent. I don't know where they put all the stuff, but their camels have to carry it. So they don't value possessions the way we do, and I have a feeling that they're more healthy because of it.
Well, I mean, there's so many things there that are so great, but absolutely, she says, you don't have to do this all the time. You do it once and then it's done. Mm-hmm. Everything's tidy, and it won't start cluttering again. But she also says, and this is also true, that for instance, I've got quite big bookshelves in my flat, haven't I? And they're crammed right to the top with books. And she says, when you actually give some space and you just throw out the books you don't read, it allows you to appreciate the books that you actually love. So I got rid of all the books I didn't like. There were quite a few books there that I hadn't even read. And I'd just been given, or I'd bought and I'd never got around to reading.
Yeah.
And I gave some of it away to charity shops as well. Found some unopened, unused jackets and stuff like that. It's just shocking.
Yeah.
But the space could free up mental space as well. And in terms of, I've been on a bit of a mission to simplify my physical life and surroundings, and also simplify my work life. I felt like really, there's so much going on in my life at the moment, and I'm so ambitious, but I felt a little bit overwhelmed. So I was like, right, what's important and what can go? And I think that's the theory behind tidying your space as well. Yeah. And it just feels great. That said, your place here is absolutely gorgeous. And I should say, if you can hear bangs outside, it's not a war zone, but that's fireworks. Your place is beautifully decorated, and it is quite simplified. It's almost minimalist. You've got the right amount of stuff, but not too much. So I don't think you'd need to do too much Marie Kondoing here.
Yeah. And do you think that our place has got a nice atmosphere?
That's lovely. Yeah.
So
really
I can tell you how wacky I am. Now what you can see on my window ledge, they're my favourite pyramids. And apparently pyramids are supposed to have nice energies, so this Japanese lady would understand all about them. And I don't know whether they do or not, but I like looking at them.
Yeah. And when you pick up those pyramids, there's 4 pyramids up there and a couple of bits of stone.
Yeah.
And you ask yourself the question, does this spark joy? Would the answer be yes?
Absolutely. I love those pyramids. And the way the light reflects on them, and there's all kinds of little different things inside. Without question, those are not going in the rubbish dump. You probably wanted me to say that you could have one, didn't you?
No, I know how valuable they are. But I think you're one of the few people that maybe doesn't need it. But certainly, if I do move into a new place as well, in a slightly bigger place, I don't want to use the spare room for the clutter. And, simplifying physical and kind of work life online. I mean, even having, nice, neat folders on my laptop, it just feels better when you log in.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed that, and I would recommend that book. The other great thing about that book is I always like something that rattles along, and this does rattle along very quickly. I mean, I read it in a week, and you can get going while you're doing it. So I think it's probably sold a few copies, because I'm sure this is a great thing to do at the start of the year as well, because it is the perfect way to turn over a new leaf. And if you do it, you must get in touch with me through my website and let me know, because the other thing that I've done is I've spring cleaned and simplified my website. Have you seen it?
I looked at it a couple of weeks ago, and it looked good. So I don't know how recently have you done it?
Probably a week or two ago.
Okay.
Yeah. I was determined just to get rid of all the clutter on there as well. So it's a nice, simple design now.
Yeah, I did. I think I did notice it. Yes, I did notice that some of the stuff had gone, and I must do the same with mine. I mean, because we talked about this, and I told you, I definitely want to declutter my website. There's too much stuff there. Yeah.
So you'll have to ask yourself, what parts of this website spark joy? Now that might be a bit confusing, but anyway. So that for me has been a fun process, and I'm sure that other people will enjoy it as well. And you can contact me through the website and let me know. Now we've got one more thing to talk about, haven't we?
Have we?
And it's yours. Can you remember what it was?
No.
I can't either. It was the psychotic revolution.
We were going to talk about our goals, weren't we?
No, I know what it was.
What?
It was, you have, I hope partly inspired by this podcast, changed your diet, haven't you?
Oh, yes. Definitely through you, Tony, actually.
Is it? Good.
Yeah, because I didn't know about this stuff until you explained it to me.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, I didn't know about it very long ago, but it's made a big difference to me. So explain, I mean, it's obviously a fairly regular theme, but perhaps 2019 is a time to try it.
Yeah, well, I can recommend it. It's called intermittent fasting, I believe, and you know more about this than I do, Tony. But in essence, what it means is I think that for 16 hours a day or something like that, you don't have anything to eat. So that would mean you have to give up at least one meal. So for what I do, I've ditched breakfast. So then I will eat my lunch at a normal time and my evening meal at normal time, and that's it. And for the first few days, I really missed my breakfast because it used to be my favourite meal. But it's funny what you get used to. And I feel more energy. And I've also lost some weight, definitely, without trying. I mean, when I do eat, I eat whatever I want and drink whatever I want. So there's no dieting or anything like this. I just feel good on it. No,
Yeah, you look good.
Add to that, Tony.
You look good. I noticed your skin looks radiant today.
Oh, thank you.
But is that down to these two black boxes, or
Well,
is it down
it could be. I wasn't going to bring this up, but apart from my clients, I've noticed a couple of things since I've been using this machine. The first thing is I had a wart on my chest.
So now we're back to talking about the scalar.
Yeah, well,
scalar
it's
wave.
just sort of looping back a
Yeah.
bit, but is it due to my diet or is it due to this? I don't really care.
Yeah.
The fact is, I had this little sort of warty thing on my chest, and after a few days, it just shriveled up and dropped off when I was in the shower. And the other thing, I've lived most of my life in the tropics, and sadly, I've got some sort of mild sun damage to my skin, and it sometimes gets a bit sore and looks a bit red. It's definitely very much better. I've had no soreness in my skin for just the last 3 weeks.
That's great.
So that's something.
Yeah, and the intermittent fasting, look, so many guests have come on Zestology to say when you give your digestion a chance to rest, all sorts of good things start to happen in the body, including autophagy, which is the dead cells basically get washed away. Think of it as kind of pushing dead leaves to the corner of the road and tidying the road up a bit. And then when the food comes down the road, that might be too much of an analogy, but that's essentially what it is.
I get what you mean, yeah.
And that's what's going on when you
Well,
don't
as the
eat for 16
Chinese would
hours.
say, it's blockage. It's getting the channels open and moving again.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we must remember the body
and
is
that comes
designed.
down to energy again, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. There's a lot in this energy stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't spread so far to my underpants, but who knows, it might do.
Who knew we were going to focus on underpants so much?
No, you never warned me about that.
Great, I'm so glad that's been a good one for you. So what time do you have dinner?
Round about 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah,
So-
and then you'll have lunch at, I don't know, 12
12-ish,
or
1 o'clock, yeah.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And do you have a coffee or a cup of tea or anything in the meantime?
Oh yeah, I'll have my cup of tea. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't consider that. I consider that to be allowable
Do you put milk in it?
a little bit. Is that naughty, Tony?
Well, I'll let you off. It'd be even better if you didn't.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't. If I have coffee, I usually don't have milk with coffee.
I think the hardcore ones probably wouldn't, and I think the pragmatic intermittent fasting experts would say, look, if it's a tiny bit of milk or cream and it's helping you intermittent fast, don't worry about it, because your body, what will happen is your metabolism will very slightly spike, and then it will go into fast again, and if you're starting to make ketones at that point, it should be right.
You see, I try not to be a dogmatic person, and some of the things we've talked about on the show today, like meditation and this intermittent fasting, anything that's got to do with health, or anything for that matter, people will be saying these are the rules. You have to follow the rules. It's like when you stop smoking, and people are made to think of failure, if they've had one cigarette.
Yeah.
Well, to me, somebody who's had one cigarette is just always getting closer and closer to being a non-smoker. But if you follow the rules and you're not good on one day, then you just say, I'm going to give up. I can't do this.
Yeah.
And if it makes it easier for me to stick to intermittent fasting by having my cup of tea with a bit of milk in, I don't lose sleep over that.
Yeah.
But I guess the dogmatists would.
Yes.
Yeah, they might.
But certainly, I think I interviewed Jason Fung last year, and he's pretty much the world's top intermittent fasting expert.
Mhm.
And he said, look, if that's what you need a cup of tea with a little bit of milk in it in the morning. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to last until lunchtime. Do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the same with meditation. People will make meditation complicated. I mean, you said you found it very difficult to do meditation and your mind was distracted and all the rest of it.
I still know it's doing me good, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see, I didn't interrupt you then, but I don't see meditation as complicated. And for anybody who's interested, I put a video on YouTube recently. To me, there aren't many rules in meditation. Meditation is just finding a quiet place, and you don't need to have mantras. You just need to, find any way to switch off your busy conscious mind. And if you don't like meditation, then do something creative. Do some doodling. Do a bit of sculpture. Play with some clay. Go for a walk in nature. These will do the same thing. These will allow your mind to quieten down. And if you can't do that, go and help somebody. Because if you're really too much in your mind, overthinking and over worrying, if you go and help somebody, it's almost like a magic potion. You stop thinking about yourself. All of our problems come when we think about ourselves too much, and when we think we're so important and the universe isn't going to work without us. We wake up in the morning, we look in the mirror, and oh gosh, another wrinkle. That's going to dictate to some extent how we're going to feel for the rest of the day. Now, when we wake up in the morning, if we're going to worry about something, we should think, I wonder if the world's gravitational field has changed and I'm going to go flying off into space, or two planets have collided. But they haven't, you see, because they've all been spinning around doing the stuff that they do without us interfering. Just like the miracles in our body, they carry on working. So stop thinking too much.
What I've asked you before,
yeah.
Have you read any books that have particularly inspired you recently? And have you got any other tips for living? Obviously, I ask this at the end of every podcast. Yeah. I'm not going to stop now.
No.
What is one book that you would recommend people to read this year that might make a difference? And it can be fiction or non-fiction. And one tip.
Okay, well, the book, and I don't think I've used this one before, and I haven't read it recently, but I've been thinking a lot about it recently, and because you've featured it on your book club, and that is Poisonwood Bible.
Oh, yeah.
And
yes,
I read that.
What a book.
Yeah, what a book. I read that for the first time when I was working in Africa, and it is just so true. And now with the kind of work that I'm doing with people's mind and spirituality and stuff, I just think another one of those mistakes that we all make, or we fall into the trap of, is believing we know best. And as the Romans said, when in Rome, do as the Romans. And what our Western society has done, some of us have gone out into the less developed or more in need countries, and we've tried to sell them our religion or our machinery or our education system or our health system and all the rest of it, paying scant regard to actually what they might like and some of their ancient cultures and traditions. And at least as a doctor, I've always tried to be sensitive, because when I go, especially in Africa and the Middle East for that matter, there are traditional healers, or what we might call witch doctors or shamans. Well, I always make a point, if I can, of going to meet them and talk to them, because I know darn well that my patients are going to see them as well as me. So it keeps me on my toes. And so there you are. I don't know whether that's going to help anybody, but anyway, I've been thinking about that book.
It's a brilliant book.
It's a brilliant book.
It's an amazing story. It's fiction.
Fiction, yeah.
And what a great recommendation. Do you know, I haven't actually read it in years and years. And I'm not one to read fiction books again, even if I love them. Mm-hmm. That is one I'd be tempted to, though.
Yeah, I think, and me too, and I think we'd both actually get more from it this time, or we'd get a different perspective.
Yeah. And one tip for living with more energy, vitality and motivation?
Well, I think we've talked a little bit about it already. I'd just recommend to people that they try and let go of ego. And I know that's an easy thing to say and a hard thing to do, but with the elite performers that I work with, whenever they have a personal best, I always try and ask them. And they said, I can't tell you what happened today. It was just like I got out of my own way, or I let go of stuff.
Well, Steve, 2019 is going to be a big year for both of us. I know you've got something coming up very shortly. Yeah. Are we allowed to talk about it?
Of course you are.
Yeah, you're walking your daughter down the aisle, aren't you?
Not quite that.
Walking here.
I'm in the same boat as my daughter as we arrive at the wedding venue, and then hopefully I'm going to help her off the boat without either one of us getting wet. So yes, I'm thoroughly looking forward to that.
Are you? I mean, it must be the most extraordinary emotion for a father.
It is, and it's one that I'd never thought of before until I had the phone call actually from the groom, my future son-in-law, asking me very formally for me to bless
Oh, great! Well,
the
it's
marriage.
good that he did that.
He is, and he's an Australian, and I said, look, you don't need to ask my permission for anything, but if it makes you feel happier, you've obviously got it. But the person you need to approve of this marriage is my daughter, and she doesn't seem to have any doubts about it.
Great.
So, but then as soon as I knew they were getting married, I was just filled with joy. I had never anticipated feeling like that, and I feel so happy for both of them.
Oh, that's really great. It's a great way to finish it. Well, good luck. I'm guessing you'll be a little bit nervous on that day.
Well, you know what? I make part of my living being a speaker. And I've just told you earlier today, I don't really have any nerves about speaking. I do on TV, by the way, and that's why I admire you for your job. But I'm starting to get nervous about the father of the bride's speech, because if I get this one wrong, it'll be more than bad ratings.
Well, I made the father of the bride's speech for my sister.
You did? I remember you telling me. And how did you feel about that?
I was very nervous beforehand. The one thing I would say is it's the best crowd you'll ever play to. Yeah. Because they all want you to succeed, and they all love the people involved. So it was an amazing experience, and I remember it very fondly. Yeah. But I was nervous. I don't think I had a drink until after.
No, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
No. I'll make up for it after.
Just line them up when you finish. Cheers, Steve.
Pleasure, Tony. Thank you very much.
That's it. Thank you, Dr. Steve. So right at the start of 2019, hope that's given you some ideas for some energy hacks that might work for you over the next few days and weeks. Have a super start to the year. Let me know how you get on with them. You can always get in contact with me through tonywrighton.com. All the blogs and podcasts are on there as well. And I've set up a new kind of blog section of the Zestology site as well at tonywrighton.com. So there's the podcast bit and the blog bit as well. So plenty to have a look at there related to energy and vitality and the new rules of health. Have a good one. Can't believe it's the new year. I will be back with a bonus episode in a few days' time, which I'm going to give you advance warning. If you're not into sport, you might not like it, but consider yourself duly warned. There's a special bonus episode with an awesome human being, Pete Cohen. I went on his podcast, and he's worked with one of the some of the world's top sportsmen and women. So kind of midway through his podcast, we had this amazing sporting geek out where we talked about some of our favourite sports people. And I've used that bit as a bonus episode in my podcast as well. So it's kind of a nice coming together of my two professional areas of interest, sport and Zestology. And you've been duly warned. If you're not into sport, you won't like it. And if you are into sport, I think you will. And you'll hear about my favourite ever sports person. So that's the bonus episode that comes out on Friday. And then next Monday it is... I won't tell you too much, but he's one of Ireland's premier health influencers, a very popular man. When I went on his podcast, got a lot of extra listeners to my podcast, and now he's coming on this one. He's pretty cool. It's another 2019 focused episode, and that's coming up next Monday. So lots on the way for you in this new year. Have a good one until then, and I'll see you soon.